Hey, Larken Rose here. One of the first things that people are concerned about when they start thinking about a society without a ruling class is, well, what happens to the nasty people? Whether you're talking about people who are just kind of negligent or inconsiderate, play their music too loud at night or leave their trash lying around the woods or whatever it is, all the way up to people who run around attacking and murdering people. So people say, well, what would happen to them? What would we do about that? Some people even go so far as to say, if not for government, there would be nothing to stop people from committing murder and doing whatever other nasty stuff. And it's funny because when somebody says that, there would be no consequences, they could do whatever they wanted and nobody would stop them, the person saying that is implying that he isn't going to do anything. If there's someone running around attacking and murdering innocent people, the guy who said nothing will happen to them, obviously he's not going to do anything, or something would happen to them. But not only is he demonstrating his own cowardice when he said there would be nothing to stop murderers, he's also projecting his own immaturity and irresponsibility onto the rest of the world, because he's also saying the other 7 billion people wouldn't do anything about it, which obviously isn't true. I would, wouldn't you? If somebody was running around murdering your neighbors, would you just go, well, there aren't politicians and there's nobody with a badge and we don't have tax collectors and bureaucrats, so oh well, I guess they're just out of luck, they're going to get murdered. And would you not even protect yourself if there wasn't government? Obviously, lots and lots of people, all the sane people, would do whatever they could to protect themselves and defend the innocent. So to say nothing would happen is just really bizarre. And it comes from having a mentality basically of a little kid in a classroom, where the teacher walks out of the room and the kids are just sitting there. We don't know what to do. No authority's telling us what to do. And Johnny's throwing things at me and there's no teacher to stop him. Ah! Because most people, having been trained into authoritarian mentality, it never occurs to them that they are the ones who should fix anything, who should stop anything. And so when people say, well, what would be done about this and that and the other thing, nasty people doing nasty things, the first thing I ask is, well, what would you do about it? Because people are so into the mentality that there has to be some master plan and some authority who writes down the law of here is what will be done with those people, that people don't think in terms of, well, what would I do about it? Which is why I always ask people, well, what would you do about it? You're a person just as much as me and just as much as the other 7 billion. What would you feel justified in doing if somebody was polluting or playing their music too loud at night or running around murdering people or whatever in between you can think of? Any nasty thing, what would you feel justified in doing about it? Because there's a very basic rule of being a moral human being, which is if it would be wrong for you to do something, don't ask anybody else to do it. And the rule is so simple, so self-evident and obvious that most people will go, well, duh, of course. Trouble is, nobody in the world who believes in government abides by that rule. Nobody. I don't care if you're a constitutionalist, Democrat, Republican, fascist, communist, anything, any kind of statist. There is nobody who believes in government who abides by the most basic rule of morality, which is if it's wrong for you to do something, don't ask somebody else to do it. Because every single candidate, every party, every government always does things that the voters know they themselves have no right to do. And to say something like, well, I'm voting for the guy who's going to tax you less. Well, do you have the right to rob me a little bit less than the other guy? No, you don't. So telling me that, well, somebody was going to rob you more, but I voted for the guy to rob you a little bit less, you are still violating the basic rule of being a human being. If it's wrong for you, don't ask somebody else to do it. Well, that's kind of the second basic rule, the first one being the non-aggression principle. And they actually go together quite well. But when people are in the mindset that there's going to be some major centralized plan to deal with whatever, polluters or people who play their music too loud or murderers or whatever else, they have to get out of that mindset. They have to start to think that maybe they are among the people who have to do something about it. So instead of saying, what will be done about such and such, well, what will you do about it? What should I do about it? And this doesn't magically make all the problems go away, but the actual practical challenge of dealing with most disputes is trivial compared to the challenge of getting people to think like responsible adults, where they start to think, well, maybe it's up to me. And a while back I did little events called Escaping the Myth. And one of the little mental exercises I did with these little groups of people is, imagine we're on an island and we're it. There's no government, there's no authority, there's nobody with a badge. And one of us is running around stealing stuff from other people. He's not killing anybody, but he's stealing stuff. What are we going to do about it? We normal people. There's not a legislature, there's not 911 to call, there's nobody with a badge. It's just people. And so with that specific example, I would ask people, so what do we do? And just off the top of their heads, everybody comes up with solutions that are way better than what government ever does. First of all, every government solution is, all right, step one, I get to rob everybody. That's the government solution. Well, we're going to tax everybody so we have the resources to stop that other robber. Well, in the island scenario, nobody is stupid enough or insane enough to start with that, to say, well, let's see, so somebody's stealing our stuff. Okay, first, I get to rob all of you so that I have the resources to protect you from him. Nobody is that insane. Everybody is insane enough to believe that who believes in government. And I did for many years. I was stupid enough to actually think that it was rational and moral to advocate mass extortion in order to protect people. And that's just stupid. So I just believed something insanely stupid for a very long time. Most of the world still believes that. But in a setting where people are put on the spot and they're responsible for what happens, they don't do that. They don't say, well, I get to boss everybody around and take their money. Nobody does that. So to me, the challenge is not even coming up with specific solutions to every imaginable dispute or problem, which I don't pretend to know how everything's going to turn out. And I don't intend to be emperor of anarchy. I'm not going to be in charge of the world. But getting people to the mindset where it's up to them, where there's just people, we're it. No legislatures, no people with badges, no authority, we're just people. Suddenly people are way better at solving problems and making things work. One good example is when there's a disaster. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a horrendous event to bring out the best in people. And it brings out the worst in some people too. But when people say, whoa, my neighbor's house is floating away, I'm not going to wait for FEMA. I'm not going to dial 911. I'm going to jump in a boat and go save him. Because suddenly it's on me. Suddenly I'm the one who has to do something. And when it occurs to people that they're the ones who have to do something, and unfortunately usually that only happens in a complete disaster area, when it occurs to people and they suddenly take on the responsibility and start to think like adults, their solutions are generally a lot better than any government solutions and ever are. But to get to that mentality, people have to shift from the authoritarian mindset to the mindset of a self-owning individual who realizes there is nothing above me. There is no magic unicorn who's going to come to save the day, who's going to come save me from polluters or somebody playing their music too loud or murderers or whatever it is. It's just us. And if we realize that, then first of all, people would stop asking me, well, without a government, how would this be handled? As if I'm going to be in charge. I don't freaking know. What would you do about it? I can tell you what I would do about it. I could tell you what I might suggest, what I might predict, but who cares? I'm one of 7 billion people. I'm not going to be in charge any more than you are. So it's really a mental exercise that people have to think over in their own heads with their own moral codes instead of waiting for some outside answer. And it's why I don't usually get into those discussions of, well, here's my plan for how to deal with this and that and the other thing, because my plan doesn't matter. My plan will not be the best plan for any problem you can come up with. There will be a million people with better plans than whatever I could come up with. So don't ask me to describe how you are going to fix problems. I don't freaking know. And you can see the mind shift in people when they grasp that they own themselves and they suddenly realize, oh, okay, well, yeah, there are things we can do to settle disputes, to protect ourselves from attackers, to do this or that or the other thing. But the first step is just grow up. Stop thinking it's somebody else's business to make the world work. Well, how will the poor be cared for? I don't know. What are you going to do? Well, how will we be protected from this? I don't know. What are you going to do about it? And it is inconvenient. It's inconvenient to be a free person where you can't just be a kid in a classroom whining to the teacher to save the day and fix everything and make everything work. where you actually have to be a responsible adult. And that's one of the reasons, one of the main reasons why people like the belief in authority, because then they can live with the lie that all they have to do is obey and do as they're told and everything will be okay. First of all, no, it won't be okay. Second of all, you're not even being a human being. You just threw your free will out the window and became somebody's slave in the hopes that that would help humanity. It doesn't help humanity for you to be a slave. It doesn't help humanity for everybody else to be a slave. It does help humanity for you to start thinking as an adult, responsible human being who owns himself and who accepts that it is your responsibility to figure out how to make the world work.